And it was a very, direct attack to the state prosecutor to say, this is your doing. There is nothing here that makes this a criminal case. And yet I'm a year in prison. He didn't say this explicitly, but that was the power of his. I found that very powerful. Yeah. That what is this actually about? And look at the mess that this is creating for everybody. Yeah.
Können wir Recher einblenden? Hallo.
Hello everybody. Here we are again. It is again still the 18th of October. 2024, and we promised to bring a report on the 32nd hearing, which was 2 days ago on Wednesday.
16th, yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Well, it started very late.
I think we were there like as usual at 9:15.
Yeah.
And it officially started, I think they brought Reiner Fuellmich in. No, the lawyers actually came in at 11:15, right? So it was 2 hours late.
Yeah.
Later?
And then they started at 11:22.
Yeah.
And then the judge simply said that there were new requests from the lawyers.
Yes.
And after 2 minutes, the judge said, okay, then we need to have a break, and we need to read what you have proposed. Then we came back, then the judge came out again and said something was missing and there were some things, and they went back again.
Yes. One of the emails was not complete, but we just didn't mention one important thing, and it was that it was quite impressive because when they came in, it was all the 4 lawyers this time, and with Reiner there were 5 people on the defense side, and there was only one of the
state prosecutor.
The state prosecutor was only one today. This day.
Yeah,
Wednesday.
Yeah, yeah, and it was quite. The energy that came from the defense party was quite impressive. Yes. I mean, they were sitting there and they were laughing and they were interacting, and there was all this buzz going on, and they were discussing. They had been downstairs for a long time discussing.
That's why. That's yes.
But there was a lot of laughter as well, and it was. I guess it must have been a little bit intimidating for the other side, that there was this battery of knowledge, of legal knowledge and judicial knowledge, and also for the judges in a way, because the judges are only, the professional judges are only 3.
Yeah.
And here's a battery of, one is an expert on company law, one is an expert on criminal law, one is an expert on family law in general, and so it's... was quite amazing.
Right.
Well, then it went on, and there's a lot to say about this day, but I think the important point was there were 2 things. One, in the afternoon, Reiner focused on the article that you wrote for the French magazine Dam News about what the situation is like in prison. But in the morning, or before that, they talked about
the statement of Reiner of his conditions of detention that was announced. But I mean, it was actually, that's our problem, because we never know what's actually handed as a request. So there were several requests, yes.
Yeah.
But
one request was, apparently Herr Grossenbach, who is a lawyer, he had represented 2
donators?
Sponsors.
Yeah.
And he had demanded that he be added as one of the plaintiffs or to be added, and that was rejected. And I think one of the requests by Edgar Siemund was, well, if he's rejected, why isn't the request by Antonia Visser and Justus Hoffmann? Because as there is no company, they also have no right to this money. And so I think his thing that had a technical hitch, that's why it took a bit longer, that was his request. Anyway, so then I'm having a blackout. There was something, there were 2 things. Oh yes, the first thing, now I know. The first thing was that the state prosecutor was allowed to speak.
Of course,
Herr Recher. And he said that actually he thought things should now stop. Sorry for the noise, there wasn't this noise when we set up. But he said he accused the defense party of delaying the process, so of making it longer and longer, and because they write their request on the spot and they don't hand them in beforehand and they come too late. And what else did he say?
Yeah, well, a lot
they
of
are
arguments.
repeating their requests, etc. And then there was quite a fiery reply.
I mean, he did this in order to ask the court not to accept any more requests for evidence. Actually, So that was he's saying. Well, that's my impression about the defense. And I mean, Katja Wörmer already was like,
yeah, she wasn't feeling too well.
No,
she had planned. She had called in sick, or submitted her sick papers, but she came anyway because it was such an important day. And so that really triggered her. And she said, well, first of all, a lot of us come from far. One of the lawyers comes from München, one comes from Pohl, some, so they all travel for hours to get there. And all the meetings are scheduled to start at 9:15. Yeah. So they could also have been allowed to start at 11 or, whatever, which gives them more time.
So that means that you have to come the day before.
Yeah.
But sometimes they have other clients, cases, the other days. Or you have to get up really early, like at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock. And
and that's okay for one time. But if you have several, these hearings are every week, then it gets a bit tiring. Mm-hmm. The other thing is that she said it's actually the fault of the state prosecutor, because they should have heard Reiner before this whole charade started. They never did, because there was so-called danger about hearing him, right? I think Justus Hoffmann said that it was dangerous because it was anti-Semitic. And also they had submitted witnesses that were basically, I think, bar one or two, but they were all... how do you say that? They all are to accuse Reiner. It is Antonia Fischer, Justus Hoffmann, Viviane Fischer.
Viviane Fischer was a bit mixed, but basically she did that. It was a bit mixed, but I mean the other two plaintiffs. Viviane Fischer is not a plaintiff. That's always important to say. Yeah. But the other two had a lot of time to speak, and of course they were accusing Reiner of all kinds of stuff. Yeah. Yeah. And Viviane Fischer basically as well. Even if it was a little bit mixed up. Yeah, and after that, there were basically two witnesses who were witnessing rather for Reiner. But I mean, they had, even the court had planned a lot of other witnesses, actually, that was scheduled to do that. And all of a sudden, it was like, it's not important anymore. We will not hear any more witnesses. And they didn't accept them. Yeah. And later on, they only accepted the witnesses proposed by suggested by the defense, invited by the defense, but only one question, one precise topic, and no other topic. Yeah. So it was very.
Yeah, so limited. That was the reply from Katja Wörmer and Christof Miseré that, it was actually a state prosecutor who had not done their work. They had not made sure that there were witnesses from both sides. They, only a month after Reiner was taken imprisoned, his lawyers were given the dossier to learn what it was actually about. So for a month they didn't know what the complaints were.
What it was all about.
Yeah.
And sorry.
Go ahead.
And the prosecutor never was looking for evidence that was in favor of Reiner. Never. Not a single thing. Yeah. That's very important. And I think it was either Christof Miseré or Katja Wörmer who said, you never did your part of work, so you are delaying.
Yeah, yeah. And to come back to the dossier also until somewhere in February still contained mistakes that they had asked to be corrected, etc. And so she said, it's us because you're not doing your job. We have to again and again try to get this information above water because you're not asking for it, and the judges well, she didn't say that, but the judges and the state prosecutors are not delivering the witnesses that we want to hear. And when we invite witnesses and they are allowed to be heard, we just get a little frame that we can ask, but nothing to create the context and the bigger picture. So there was quite a big reply. And then this Rechter, this state prosecutor, said, "So what's your point?" And then, both Miseré and Katja Wörmer then fired back at him, like, "What's our point? His point is that you're not doing your job, and that's why it's taking so long."
That's why we're still here.
And also Miseré said, and it's also this rule that the judges made, that they have to read everything.
Yes.
I mean, if we could just do things orally, it would go a lot quicker. But every time we have to hand it in, we have to write it up. They have to go back and read it, then they have to come back. So it was a very fiery interaction.
Yes.
Then the judge wanted to suggest that they started their final plea. And then they said, no, actually, we want to still discuss the situation of Reiner's imprisonment.
Mm-hmm.
And so Reiner started to tell the story, which was a large part of the contents of your article.
Yes, but not yet. I mean, before it was Christof Miseré who read a part about that. And he said, I'm asking an official checkup whether Reiner is really capable at the time being of being imprisoned, right?
Yeah.
And of doing a process.
Yeah.
Being capable of following the process.
And that had to do with what came later, also the death of his mother, that he couldn't go to her deathbed, but and then all the violent stuff that he was telling about the imprisonment.
Which was quite a part that is written in the article, but he told some points that were not in the article. It was much more than that. Yes.
Yeah, it was much more. And I, for example, didn't know that his birthday is on the 5th of May, and there was a big party here in. We forgot to say that we're in front of the prison. We're in front of the prison. So Reiner Fuellmich is behind us in prison. We thought we'd pick another location. So there was a big birthday party here, and the day before his birthday party, you said already they made stricter rules for him.
Yeah, there was a hearing. It was a Friday. I mean, it was May 4th, and there was a hearing, and it was quite a bizarre energy. Anyway, it was very strange, pretty short as well, and. We didn't know that actually Reiner's harassment, do you say that? Or the way they persecuted him around his birthday weekend already started on Friday, before his birthday.
Okay.
He had to take off his clothes after
coming back. That was the first time.
I think he checked his room. There was really a lot of special checking going on and so on. And we thought that Reiner would be that he had his hour, how do you say that?
Yeah, his free hour.
His free hour outside in the garden, so that he would be able to at least get a glimpse of his birthday
to hear
party.
The sounds of the birthday party. Yeah. But it turns out that they moved him to another cell so that he wouldn't hear anything, so he didn't know.
So here in Rosdorf, in this prison, but really on the backside. So Reiner here heard nothing.
Yeah.
And we were really loud.
Yeah.
Really heard nothing.
Yeah. And on top of that, he wasn't allowed any visitors. He wasn't allowed any phone calls until the next Monday. So this his whole weekend. He was isolated. His lawyers couldn't contact him, or he wasn't allowed to contact them. They're not allowed to contact him anyway.
His wife either was not allowed to.
Yeah. So very childish means of punishing somebody, I think. But anyway, so that was said. But I mean, a lot more was said. It was. He was saying that it's bad that the one who is running overall the department has the opinion that everybody who is preliminary imprisoned is guilty. He
says that he's a social worker. He's supposed to be a social worker, but everything he does is really not at all the behavior of a social worker.
Mean.
It's very mean, very mean. Yes.
Yeah. So he told about this one man who comes from Montenegro, and he was discriminated against in the prison. They called him Gypsy.
Yeah.
There was one story about how he was out on his walk and he got attacked by 3 other prisoners with a glass bottle that Reiner said, where did they get this glass bottle? Because you're not allowed to have anything that's dangerous, of course. They are there also in a preliminary investigation, but they're there for manslaughter and violent acts.
Yeah, murder, I think as well, yes.
So Reiner says it's very odd that they were in the same space together, and
I think that is important for that this Kevin, he's called Kevin Retze because he officially allowed Reiner to.
Are we supposed to say the name?
He wishes that. He wishes to expose the name. He himself.
Okay.
Wishes
okay.
that. Not really. I mean, he was asking this social worker who is
Mr. D.
Mr. D. I'll call him like that. Yes. To put him in a safer, to put him in isolation, actually, in order to be safe, because he knew that he would be attacked as a supposed gypsy. And he did not listen to him, and he allowed those other people to have a glass bottle. And when they were outside, I think in an outside hour, they took the glass bottle and hit it on his head.
Yeah, they wanted something from him that he couldn't give, or he didn't want to give, and then they got angry. Is the story. But he got so badly hurt that his cheekbone got pushed inwards, and it was about to damage his eye, so they had to open his skull to correct the cheekbone. So it was a massive operation. His wife didn't know to what hospital he was transported. Was it also not, when she finally did find out, she wasn't allowed to visit him. And so because he desperately wanted to see his wife, he asked to be transferred back to the prison earlier than really was medically feasible.
Visit him, yes.
So that she could visit him. Then he was put in isolation, and then he was hurt again.
I think 3 days later he was hurt again by people working for the prison, and I think he was put in isolation after that.
Oh, okay.
Actually.
And then he managed somehow to get a piece of paper to Reiner Fuellmich to say, I give you my permission to go after this man, this Mr. D, and to either do a financial claim or whatever was necessary.
For Katja Wörmer, he gave that, yes.
Yeah, and then when he learned about that, this Mr. D, he then moved him to another prison.
Right.
Yeah.
And up to this day, he's not found.
No, they suspect he is in a certain prison, but they haven't had confirmation that he's there yet.
Yeah.
So that was one story. Another story is about an Afghan man. I think we've mentioned that before. Who Reiner he's only 26 years old. Reiner says he's in prison because of a false witness statement. He did have an alcoholic problem. He woke up one morning not knowing where he was and what he had done, and then a woman, his girlfriend, or I don't know who.
Not his girlfriend, no. Some woman said that he had
been violent or
violated her. Violated her, yes.
But her witness statements don't add up, so there's questions about that. And apparently she wanted money. But when Reiner's not allowed to talk to anybody, and so there's a punishment for both the person who talks to him and himself. And I don't know what was the reason, but one day this Afghan prisoner was visited in his cell by prison guards.
Yes.
They opened the door so that the camera wouldn't see. I don't know, and the
camera was taken away. I think, yeah. It was not filmed anyway. Yeah.
And then they beat him up and they raped him. And then this was quite an emotional part in Reiner's testimony yesterday, because he was then quiet, he couldn't speak. And he said, I saw him the next day and it wasn't good. And then he sort of got himself together again, and then he said, but the people who did this, they will pay for it. And you could see that both the state prosecutor and the judges, they didn't really know what to do with themselves, because that was really, he described it in much more detail than we just did.
Yes.
So it was, everybody was quite shocked.
It was very emotional, yes. Yeah. And I mean, we did not really mention the first part in which he described his own conditions.
Yeah.
And I mean, he was rather cool when describing his own very lawyer style, when he was describing his situation. And it was already pretty shocking to hear, because I mean, he's isolated then like 4.5 months, I think, really isolated. That means when he does not have process days, he's really alone all day long, all night long.
Yeah.
He doesn't see anybody when he goes out. And the only contact to the outside world is his lawyer, or the rare visits or phone calls with friends or family members. But that's only 3 hours a month.
Yeah, and he's allowed to call his lawyers, but when he's on the phone with them and somebody walks by, they immediately cut the phone. And he has to stop talking.
Yeah.
So, and also he described the transport that in the morning at 7:30 or so, he's put in a cell, then he's put in another cell to take photos, and then he's thoroughly checked. Then he has to write every time again that he doesn't want a bulletproof vest.
Yeah.
Then they leave him in a cell. Sometimes he's forgotten. He says they sometimes sort of
they leave him there like for 2 hours or something. Yes.
Yeah. And
well, an important point to me as well, because I didn't know that, was that he's always escorted by policemen, by really heavily armed policemen, and those policemen tell Reiner, we never experienced something like that.
No.
So the police.
They are also surprised.
They are as well surprised. So that's really something to ask questions.
Yeah. And then the guy who was from Montenegro, this Kevin Recep, one day his birthday was coming up, and he asked permission to be out of isolation for 1 day so that he could go to the prison shop and buy stuff to bake a cake for his birthday and share it with other prisoners. And he was given permission to do that. So he did buy the stuff, he did bake the cake, but then when he had the cake baked, they told him, and now you can't share it with anybody. This is just to show the atmosphere in the prison, that it's not at all to support people who want to be good and normal again, but it's on the contrary, it's to get at you all the time. And Reiner happened to walk by when this guy was in the kitchen with his cake, not knowing who to share it with, because he couldn't. And then he asked, could I just go in and say hello? And then luckily his guard said, yeah, go in. And so they did eat a piece of cake together. Mm-hmm. But the pitifulness of this is just...
personally, for me personally, that made me cry in the courtroom, because it was so horrible and so moving. And I mean, it was interesting as well, because Reiner was much more moved emotionally when he was talking about the suffering of other people than of his own suffering. His own suffering, he's always very lawyer style. It's like that. But when talking about his two friends, because they became friends, then he was really close to tears as well.
Yeah.
So that's quite special. Yeah.
Yeah, and he said about how he's there's now this guy who wants to force him to give blood, not give blood, but give blood samples because of this old TBC tuberculosis case that is all long gone. It has nothing to do with the present prisoners, but they need to be constantly checked for their blood, apparently. And even the doctor is saying, look, this is nonsense. You're healthy. There's no need to check in. I think what was very powerful was that Reiner was just saying all these, like what the situation was in the prison, and just, like what madness is going on there, what absolute unnecessarily violence and the opposite of what you would think that people would do to make people able to return to normal society. And then when he then said, and this is all because of a couple of people who have said that I have taken money, which I haven't. This is all because of a couple of people who want something bad from me, that this is all happening to prisoners inside because they get punished for the contact with him.
Yeah.
And it was a very, direct attack to the state prosecutor to say, this is your doing. There is nothing here that makes this a criminal case. And yet I'm a year in prison. He didn't say this explicitly, but that was the power of his. I found that very powerful. Yeah. That what is this actually about? And look at the mess that this is creating for everybody.
Yeah. Did we talk about this other person next to his cell? Did we mention that? Not yet, huh?
No, and that wasn't in your article, I don't think.
That was not in our article because that only happened like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. So a new guy came.
They put a guy next to his cell, and he was. I think he did something not really serious, but he was missing to a court.
He missed to attend a court hearing.
Yes, right. And if you miss to attend a court hearing, you really you go to prison directly. And this was this man's case.
Yeah, and he ought to have gone to a psychiatric ward.
Oh yeah.
But because he didn't show up, he has to go to prison.
Mm-hmm. And he's like a heavily affected psychiatric case, right?
Yeah. He's neglected, self-neglected, Reiner said, and he screams and cries in different voices. All day and all night, and he bangs the doors and the walls with something heavy, also his head. And he said, this guy, it doesn't belong here. He's not even a criminal, or he's just really in a bad way. And so, and because of that, he couldn't sleep anymore, and he can't concentrate on his case because it's just non-stop.
Yeah, and it's especially the entire night, like at 2 o'clock, at 3 o'clock in the night, he is banging his head against the wall next to the bed of Reiner, right? And he said the entire station A0 suffers because nobody is able to sleep. It's so loud.
Yeah.
And the prison confirmed that.
Yeah, because what happened then, but that was today.
That was today,
Yeah, that the judge confirmed that they had checked with the prison, and that yes, indeed, this person had problems, but he was given sedatives, but we already explained that in the other video.
But this was only 2 days ago.
This was 2 days ago. So for 3 weeks that had been going on. But there was a lot more that Reiner said. And then it went on because then Miseré wanted to tell the judge to now make a decision about whether he should still be in prison and whether Reiner is still able to follow these processes.
Yes.
In this sort of...
Well, not to make a decision, but to accept to interrupt the hearings, to interrupt the entire process for the time that Reiner is really professionally checked.
Yeah.
Really checked.
Yeah.
Is he really able to attend these hearings? With these conditions, with all these conditions.
Yeah. And then the judge said, well, we'll do this in our final verdict.
Yes.
And then Miseré became quite angry and he said, no, you're going to decide now, or at least, we're not going on until you decide.
Yes.
And if you do, then I already have a warrant for you, or a warrant, criminal procedures.
Yes.
He would start criminal procedures against the judge. And then the judge laughed and he said, I have it here in my bag. We're all on the table. It's ready to go. And then the judge did decide to stop the hearing.
Well, they went outside in order to do their secret checkup as always. And then like a few minutes later, they came back and they said, okay, we interrupt the hearing now.
Yeah, so that was more or less the last hearing on Wednesday. And next week it goes on. It's very clear that next week the final pleas have to start. I mean, there's not much they can do now. We don't know if we're going to be there because we both have different arrangements, which is a nuisance. But we hope that, Claudia Jakowski, I think she's called, she will cover it, or someone else. And there's, of course, Nicole.
Nicole Wolf,
she's always there, and she makes splendid notes, but they're in German. So thank you for your attention, and thank you for this.
Thank you, Djamila. And we'll still have probably look at this atmosphere here around this this prison, which is quite special. I mean, this entire area that maybe could be said. You see all this this walls until there. This is all Rosdorf prison. And Reiner, I think, is in the basement, right?
Is he?
I think so. Yes.
Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those are all the walls.
Oh yeah.
Let's take it. Yeah, it's huge. We can't really cover it here. There's a lot of buildings in the back. But you can see the high walls and the, how do you say it, the barbed wire over the fences. And there are cameras everywhere. And they're doing a lot of building. I don't know if that's for the prison. Well, thank you, Kerstin.
Thank you, Djamila. Thank you.
And bye-bye, everybody.
Thank
See
you
you
for
next
watching.
time.
Yes.